everybody. I am Dr. Amy Nelson, and I am going to talk to you today about digestive enzymes. So yeah, this is a fun topic. I like learning and teaching and all of that, but I guess I'll tell you about myself. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I work here in Austin, Texas. What's a naturopathic doctor? Well, a naturopathic doctor, like myself, we look at the root cause of an illness. And I chose that path because that just makes sense for me. That's how my brain works. I like to understand why somebody is ill, you know? So we study, my personal background is studying digestive health. So I did an associateship at the IBS Treatment Center in Santa Monica. And so that's where I got a lot of experience studying really complex irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and any kind of like very strange, weird digestive issue or something that was really hard to treat. You know, a lot of times that was our clientele was definitely people who were struggling and hadn't had answers in any other realm. So I understand how the digestive system works from an inflammatory perspective. I look at nutrition from an inflammatory perspective. And I also know the microbiology workings of the bowel. And so that is a very important piece to things. So when somebody's got, like, say, a bacterial or a yeast overgrowth or a parasitic overgrowth in the bowel, that's something I can kind of hunt down and understand how to heal the bowel, and then kind of understand what's insulting the bowel, say, you know. So there's different foods that can be, you know, kind of looked at as poisons versus anything else. That's what we're going to kind of talk about today too, is the upper GI. So digestive enzymes, and when should you need them and why should you need them? So when do you need digestive enzymes, and what's that about anyway? Well, think of yourself as somebody who gets hungry. And when you get hungry, especially when you start thinking about your favorite food, like let's say it's brownies for me, would be like something chocolate related. You start to salivate, you start to think, I'm hungry. Or maybe you actually are super hungry and even green beans sound good. So you start to salivate, and actually in your saliva you produce amylase, which is an enzyme that helps you break down starches, right? So we do start salivating, and then that sends a signal to the stomach to start upregulating stomach acid. So stomach acid needs to be strong. Your stomach acid should be pH 2. That's a real strong acid. So that's just going to get you ready to break down proteins appropriately and to honestly, like, say, disinfect your food, right? So if you're eating something that has a weird thing with it, then hits that strong stomach acid and it's a goner, right? So that's your first kind of line of defense with a lot of things. So stomach acid sends a message, and I'm going to skip over a lot of biochemistry here. There's other biochemistry that's pretty complicated, but let's just keep it simple. Stomach acid, that cues up. I always tell people, your stomach acid, your bile, and your pancreatic output, they're in a band together. They queue up together. So you've got stomach acid that queues up kind of like bile. You need strong bile. And bile is opposite of acid. It's very basic, right? So it helps us break down fats. And your gallbladder contracts to concentrate the bile. Okay, that's a big deal. So think of your liver, like the sink drain for the liver is the gallbladder. And if your sink's ever backed up, mine gets backed up from time to time, doesn't drain well. So think about it like the gallbladder, when it contracts and it concentrates the bile, it's like pulling things out of the liver. The liver's detox pathways actually go through the bile. So the bile itself is concentrated, and that also gets us ready for digesting fats and anything fatty, like absorbing your fat-soluble vitamins, right? So do you have trouble with, do you have trouble with vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin K? Those are all the fat-soluble vitamins. Those are things that, rely on bile. Another little cue for me, when I look at a cholesterol panel and I see the good cholesterol is low, then I think, bile. I bet that person needs some bile. There's some bile missing there, right? So you got stomach acid, and the next band member is bile, right? And gallbladder. And then we got pancreatic output. So that's the third band member. They're in a trio. So your pancreatic output, those are the pancreatic enzymes. And those are usually amylase, lipase, and protease. But I want you to remember this because those are just the family members. There's a lot of other digestive enzymes and their derivatives. Okay? So amylase, that basically helps us break down the starches. There's a lot of other like subcategories in that family, okay? And then there's the lipase that breaks down fat, just like, so we got two little areas for fat breaking down, which would be your bile and then the lipase type stuff, right? And then protease, which breaks down proteins, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about some digestive enzyme formulas that sort of add to this. And this is super important because I don't want you to oversimplify the idea of digestive enzymes to just 3, okay? Because there's a lot more, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And these are the 3 family headings, but there's a lot other subcategories within those. So that's that, right? What would cause what we call upper GI insufficiency? So what does that? It means like upper GI is your stomach, your biliary tree, the gallbladder, and the pancreas, and maybe the first part of the duodenum, right? So that is like it's basically like shut down. What would do that? Well, chronic inflammation. So if you've got like say Crohn's or irritable bowel, or you always have diarrhea, you always have constipation, there's something going on inflammatory with the rest of your system, right? That's a reason. Like chronic inflammation further down in the intestinal system, that'd really drag it down. That would say, whoa, let's not put food in here, we're inflamed. So I'm going to feed back and say, hey, let's make weaker stomach acid, let's not concentrate bile, and let's not do pancreatic output. So there's some signals to slow that down. What could that feel like for you? Well, nauseous, gassy, could feel full, could feel just not hungry. But hunger's weird, right? Because we've got hunger. Some people are emotional eaters, so that may just get overridden by any of the nervous system debacles. And of course, there's like additives in food that kind of make us addicted to it. So that could be like another thing where, like those chips really just taste good no matter what, So there could be some things like that that override all of that. So what could you be feeling? Nothing. Fine. Right? So there's not a tried and true sort of like honest symptom that gives us a good reflection of upper GI insufficiency. Now, another reason to have upper GI insufficiency would be stress. We're stressed out. So stress, that sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, has a feedback loop right onto those organs. In fact, I was doing some reading on the pancreas the other day, and pancreas is actually innervated by both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. What's that mean? Sympathetic is fight or flight, run from danger, like think of a rabbit. The parasympathetic is rest and digest. Think of a tortoise, right? So it's like we have to be in a restful nervous system in order to have a GI supported well, right? So when we are calm, we get better blood supply, we get better cues for the upper GI, okay? So do you need upper GI support? It's hard to know, but are you stressed? Yeah, then check that box. You probably need that too. Then if you are, if you're inflamed, you probably need that, right? When else do you need it? Well, do you have gallstones, gallstones and gall sludge and problems there? Yeah, then you remember, if you have trouble in one of the 3 areas, you have trouble in all of it because they're in a band together. So if I've got reflux, I probably need upper GI support. If I've got gallstones or gallbladder pain or gallbladder anything, I need upper GI support. You may not feel a lot of pain from the pancreas. Usually, if you feel pain from the pancreas, it hurts, and it's usually pancreatitis, and that's bad news. You got to go to the ICU, or you got to get to the doctor for that. So there's something going on, yeah? So here, indigestion, belching, right upper quadrant pain, like liver type pain, stuff like that, usually tells us we've got issues with the upper GI and we need help. So is there a test? Well, I mean, there's pancreatic enzyme testing, but it's not like to tell us anything what we call functional wrong. It means like it's, if you got amylase and lipase issues, those are big deal issues, and those are GI doctor time issues, right? But there's not going to be something that shows up with upper GI insufficiency on test results very well. You know, it's hard to, we don't really have an overt test for stomach acid or how concentrated your bile is. You know, usually we start imaging and tests when there's really big issues with those. So you kind of go by how stressed and inflamed somebody is, honestly. Now, certain other conditions, like say if somebody's osteopenic or has osteoporosis, are they not absorbing their nutrition? Correct. Then they probably need some support, because it meant that they just weren't getting their minerals where they needed them to go, right? So you're eating food, but you weren't absorbing it. Cravings. I have that with people a lot because I work with, you know, people who have emotional eating type stuff or just trying to lose weight and things. So we talk about like, well, I mean, I myself have had this where it's like you get home, oh my gosh, get me into the pantry. You're just hunting the pantry for food, munching, that kind of thing. What was that about? That means like earlier in the day, I probably didn't really get enough out of the food I ate, right? So, and that could be at work, you're eating over the sink in 15 minutes, right? Just gobbling something down, because we all work. We've got workplace stuff, right? So sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, yeah, I didn't really take time to really get into my parasympathetic nervous system while I was eating beef jerky over the sink, you know, or on the run or something. So yeah, that probably didn't get absorbed very well. So for me, when I started taking digestive enzymes, all that craving stuff stopped. That was interesting for me. I was like, oh, I just wasn't getting the nutrition that I needed. So a craving could be like, you're missing out on minerals, you're missing out on vitamins, you're missing out on that. So that digestive enzyme support really, really helps that. You know, so yeah, that, you know, those kind of things go on. I'm trying to think of other like things like osteopenia, well, hypothyroidism, you know, so sometimes with hypothyroidism we're missing key nutrients like iodine, selenium, and tyrosine. Those have to be absorbed. Any kind of condition where we kind of have a malabsorption as its like situation, you know, that means probably that upper GI has some problems. So we've got you know, hypothyroidism kind of stuff. We've got you could make an argument for mood stuff like anxiety, depression, you know, those could be malabsorption issues from the amino acids. You could make an argument for, of course, we mentioned osteopenia, osteoporosis, or any of those inflammatory bowel issues, you know, we mentioned those. So anyway, how do I kind of know which one to take? There's a million, in case you haven't noticed. There's a million different versions. So what I do with people is I ask a ton of questions, right? And if I kind of get wind that you've got gallbladder and stomach acid problems in addition to the pancreatic problem, I usually try to find a digestive enzyme that has all three of that. So that's my first thing. Like I want to know if I've got maybe a little betaine HCl for the stomach acid, and then I want to see maybe a little bit of ox bile for the gallbladder, and then I want to see at least the three family members, amylase, protease, and lipase. So a good one on here is this dude, Panplex. One of these days I will fix the mirror thing. We'll figure this out one day. So Panplex is by Integrative Therapeutics. This is Panplex phase 2, even though I'm just realizing now it's Panplex 2 phase. I never say it that way. I always say Panplex phase 2. So this is a little tablet, and it's got betaine HCl, pepsin, and it's got another little, you know, HCl derivative, glutamic acid HCl. And then it's got pancreatinin, amylase, protease, lipase, and ox bile. So it's got all three. It's in a tablet, and they recommend like 2 tablets, but honestly, I'll have people take 1. You should take a digestive enzyme like 30 minutes before a meal, during the meal, and as late as 30 minutes after, in that window, right? So if you're like, oh, I'm going to eat something, I'm on top of it, I'm going to take a digestive enzyme, that's totally fine. Make sure you eat something within that, you know, 30-minute window. or if you're right there in the meal. Like I actually have this on my table, like, so, because I always forget to take it before, so I realize, oh, here it is. I've got it next to the salt and the pepper on my table, my kitchen table. So then I just take it when we're eating dinner or something. Or like if I eat something and I gotta go, I'm going home and I forgot to take the digestive enzymes, you could take it when you get home. That's totally fine. You know, I mean, boogie home. Try to be there within 30 minutes or so. Or, you know, I've got them in the car. I take them, you know, everywhere now. So anyway, that's usually a good starter, is if you, you know, have heartburn, indigestion, and maybe you have gallbladder pain or a history of gallstones, this would be a good one. You know, you would just take a good run of the mill. Now, let's say there's pancreatic issues. Let's say, you know, I have worked with people who've got some, you know, pancreas sort of, I have a couple of different patients who've had pancreatic cancer, and so they have to have a more comprehensive digestive enzyme. This is one that I found is really good. This Pure Encapsulations Digestive Enzymes Ultra. Okay, and here you can see, remember I said those family members have a lot of derivatives. So there's probably about 15 different derivatives on here. So a lot of times I'll add this one if I feel like somebody has a stronger pancreatic insufficiency. Maybe they've had, you know, different types of pathologies with the pancreas, or even, you know, a lot of times the diabetics, right? So they might often need a little bit more support for the pancreas. You'll use this Ultra, this Digest Ultra, or the other one would be this Ortho Digest. This one's also got a lot of different like derivatives on it. And this also, I mean, come to think of it, has some ox bile and some betaine HCl in it. So sometimes, like, you know, it's kind of just picking out what's best for you, you know. So a lot of times I'll add more digestive enzymes to something if somebody's got pancreatic problems. And so it might, you know, if we really have issues, I might do both of those, like a Panplex plus a digestive enzyme plus, you know. So like, I mean, I hate this answer. I know it's hard, it's frustrating to hear, but it just depends, right? If you wanted to pick something out for yourself, probably either the Panplex or the Ortho Digest would be an easy peasy one, you know? If you've got a little bit more complicated pancreatic thing, then you would add the Ultra, the Digest Ultra. Now, in the sense of having more inflammation, that's where these guys come in. This is Gluten Ease Extra. And then this one is Intolerance Complex, right? So let's say you've got digestive enzyme issues, but you're inflamed. Like, so you're more of the having trouble with gluten and dairy and maybe some food sensitivities. Maybe you've got celiac. Maybe you've got, you know, issues like that. The DPP4 and the protease in here are definitely things that we use to take down the inflammation from those exposures. So glutenese is probably the star of the show with having the highest concentration on that. But then, you know, this one's a close second. So it's got more of a profile with it. So I use them almost interchangeably. A lot of times I'll say to people, I want you to do this, or the celiac people, if they get an accidental exposure, we pump them full of this. And then a lot of times, like, this will be probably for the next 30 days, right? So it's easy to do 2 of these when you go out to eat. And if you just had a flare up of something and you know, have some digestive bloating, gas, or any of your signs of irritable bowel, then we would do this 1 capsule each meal for the next, like, say 30 days to try to just reset that inflammation. So kind of I look at it as, okay, do they need all 3 kind of areas in the upper GI supported? Do they need additional pancreatic support? And are they dealing with inflammation? You know, so that kind of helps me determine what formula to take, okay? Trying to think. Oh, you know what? People who have SIBO, people who have yeast overgrowth, that's a big reason. So think of it this way, like amylase, protease, and lipase out of the pancreas don't digest those components well, right? So you're sending a bad sugar molecule, poorly digested protein, or poorly digested fat down into the small intestine, that makes the flora go crazy. Like, it just doesn't feed the flora in the balanced way and actually contributes to the overgrowth that goes on. So it's one of the reasons why somebody would have developed those kind of things. So that also would be in the history if somebody comes in with microbial problems in the bowel, like, you know, or if they've been diagnosed with SIBO or a yeast overgrowth, or even just have like gas and bloating and all that kind of stuff, they probably need digestive enzymes.